How's it going, fam? Welcome back to Erica's EDC, and today we're going to do a video on my best performing knives of 2024. I'm so excited to do this. A lot of people at the end of the year tend to do like a 5 most carried EDC knives of 2024 or something similar to that, but I wanted to do a video on my top performing knives of 2024, knives that I thought in use either went above and beyond my expectations or maybe surprised me or just hit all of the sweet spots. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 knives. I didn't want to put a limit on it, but these are knives that when I used them this year, they were basically just awesome. So some of them are going to be like performance based in terms of steel. Some of them are going to just be overall design and ergonomics. So let's get into it. As you can tell, the Chris Reeve Small Sabenza 31 is in the lineup. They're in no particular order. And some of these, since they got tested, they are covered in blade balm because they are in like storage for now. So just a heads up. But first up is the Chris Reeve Small Sabenza 31 in Magna Cut. I have had a very long relationship with the Small Sabenza between the 21 and the 31. I've gone through their S35 VN, their S45 VN, and then their Magna Cut. And this one in Magna Cut here was a pivotal point in my experience because going from S45 VN to Magna Cut was something that people really wanted to know about. Is it worth the money? Is it worth the hype? Is the Magna Cut that different than the S45? So when this came in and I got to run this, it was an interesting experience for everyone involved. This is not my only Magna Cut Sabenza. We do have another one that has the beautiful wood inlays and the gold lug, all that stuff. Nikki has that one right now. But from my testing and my experience, the Magna Cut is absolutely worth the hype. This was such a different experience compared to the S45 VN. The level of bite that this takes when you get rid of that convex edge from the factory and you lay it back, it's just so toothy and so bitey compared to the S45 that it really was just an overall blast to use. I've always said this, but I really do think that they ran their S35 way too soft for way too long. I understand why they did it, but just I think anything under 60 HRC just isn't worth our time. I know that's gonna upset the peanut gallery, but it is what it is. So their S45 was a huge improvement over the S35. However, S45 tends to glass out. It's a good steel, and if you run a thin geometry and a toothy like 325 or 600 grit edge, it's great. But the Magna Cut was just a different experience. It really genuinely is so much more toothy. It just holds an edge longer. Even the sharpening experience on this was so much better than the other steels because the feedback was so much better. Especially their S35 was really like gummy on the stones, and the Magna Cut has just been absolutely amazing to use. I cannot recommend it any more than I already have, but the Sabenza in Magna Cut really was very exciting for me this year. Next up, we have the Northern Knifeworks Dart in K390. Oh, I forgot to mention, Chris Reeve is running their Magna Cut at 63 to 64 HRC. I'm pretty dang sure. So that was also like really exciting. Okay, Northern Knifeworks Dart in K390 at 66.5 HRC, 10 thou BTE. Guys, this holds a sweet spot in my heart because I designed it and it was my first real design to like go out into the public and be recognized. And Levi has sold so many darts since I collabed with him on this. And that makes me so happy. Like, a lot of these have been sold, and it's because they perform. I did so much with this knife this year. As you can see, there is some rust on it and some pitting. That was kind of done on purpose just to test the corrosion resistance. But this knife did everything I wanted it to and more. We did process a hair on camera with this, and everything that I envisioned it doing, it did incredibly well and probably better than I thought. Processing game with this is so amazing. Having that jimping up there to really choke up and work inside of small areas on game was incredible. We also did use a dart when we were processing that deer, and I guess it's just really cool to have a vision in your mind of what you want a knife or a design to do, and then when you actually do it and it succeeds, it's like, holy crap, we did it. I've just been blown away at the performance of the dart for such a small package. It's like a 6.5-inch knife. It's pencil thin, but we ran super hard, super thin, super steel, and this was an absolute hit this year. I was blown away at the performance. I have yet to sharpen this. I've just stropped it. It's like scary razor sharp. We never experienced any edge damage, and I really beat the crap out of this thing. It was also very cool to put this into the hands of people that have no knowledge of knives whatsoever and have them be like, whoa, this is so cool. When I used this to process that deer this year, I gave this to people that have no knowledge of metallurgy or anything, and they were just blown away at how easy this is to manipulate in your hands when you're processing game, how sharp it stayed during that process. And it was just really cool to share something with other people that was in my mind and have so many people experience it and be like, well done. So I was very impressed with the Northern Knifeworks dart this year. I just love this little guy, and I'm so grateful that Levi brought this to fruition for me. Next up, we have a really controversial knife that was so fun to unveil in testing. This is the Scrawny Lumberjack Splinter in 1095. This is a knife that made Peanut Gallery very angry. There was actually an entire group chat made about this testing. And this is in 1095. It's 5,000 BTE, and it's 62 HRC 1095, custom heat treat, custom everything. This is a knife that I had designed in conjunction with an identical knife in 10V, where we did head-to-head testing this summer, and the 10V version is identical, 5,000 BTE, 17 degrees per side. The 10V was at 64, 65 HRC, but they were identical knives, and we ran them head to head, and the results were surprising. So this knife did very, very well in the testing, and during the review of this knife, I basically said, if you were an average Joe and you got this knife and used it, you probably wouldn't notice a difference between this and other steels. Like, it performed very, very well, and it was really surprising how well it did. It held an edge great, didn't take any edge damage, super easy to strap back, just a pleasure to use. So that was a two-part conclusion, because number one, it's 1095, a simple carbon steel. It has very, very low toughness, regardless of what people say. Science tells us it has very low toughness, okay? So it was really fun to compare this to like my 1095 SEs and such, because we have always been told thick for toughness, soft for toughness, and we realized that is a cop-out essentially, because it is 5,000 BTE, 62 HRC, and we experienced no issues, and it performed so much better than the 1095 on the market. So the first part of that conclusion was that there is no reason to run knives thick and soft other than laziness. I'm sorry, Peanut Gallery. However, that doesn't equate to 1095 being a good steel, okay? It's not a good steel, and I'm so sorry that that upsets you guys. It's just not, especially with what we have available to us now. There's just, if you want to use it because you like it, use it. But that doesn't mean it's good, okay? So compared to soft, thick 1095, it's great. But realistically speaking, if we took this knife, even though it's custom and thin and hard and all of the things, if we took this knife and did a cut test between this and 10V or Crewware or MagnaCut or 4V or 3V, this would never be able to keep up, ever. Because 1095 is just not a good steel, and I'm sorry, it's just not. Is this good compared to production 1095? Yes, but in the grand scheme of things, it's still not gonna hang with other knife steels. So it was just fun to experience. Like I said, this knife did incredibly well, but if I were to do a cardboard cut test or a sisal rope test, it would not compare to any of the other, like, good knife steels. This knife is something that blew my mind. This is the Chum by Duckhead Forge in 8670. And this is 62 HRC, like 10 thou BTE. This came with me along with this for the deer processing. I actually have its brother over here. Man, this is gonna be a long video, guys. I'm sorry, but this is like my kryptonite talking about this stuff. This is another design that I did this year with Dusty from Duckhead Forge. This is my second design with him. We made two versions, one with the harpoon, as seen here. Really, really cool. This is a little more like badass looking, I guess. So we did the harpoon version, which is called the Crush in 8670. And then we did the Chum, which is the one without the harpoon. And I brought this one with me to do the deer processing. And this was unbelievably impressive. Got the Teeners. So 8670 is probably the toughest steel that you can use. Like, it has legitimately the best toughness, like definition of toughness, the best. I had never experienced this steel before this knife, and I didn't have like crazy expectations before it because it is a simple carbon steel, but I was really curious to see how the edge holding capabilities were because it is so tough. Generally speaking, when you excel in one particular point of metallurgy, you fall short in another category. So if a steel has crazy good toughness, it's generally not going to have the best corrosion resistance or the best edge retention. So I was really curious to run this. I did bring it to do the deer processing, and I used this probably the most out of any of the knives that were brought to that occasion. This did so well. It was mind-blowing. We did some crazy stuff with this knife, and the only thing that we left with was one small chip in the very tip. It was like right up here, and that was because we were going in between the ribs of that deer and just, I would call it scraping the bones to get all of the meat off. We utilized every ounce of that animal and literally took this knife to scrape meat off of the bones because anything scrap related was going to the dogs. So we just took everything off of that carcass. There is a short showing that, and there's a whole video on this, but we use this as a scraper. We processed so much meat with it. We went between joints and everything, and all we had was one little chip up here, and it's like, I think it's like 8 thou up here. It is so paper thin. And we left with one little tiny chip that literally took minutes to get out. So this was crazy easy to sharpen. razor sharp after that process. Even though we used it crazy hard, it ended up with a beautiful blue hue patina after that, and this was just so cool to use. I want more designs in 8670. I'm very curious to continue using that steel. Dusty just nailed it with this knife and with the heat treat and everything. I was so impressed with the performance of this knife. Next up, Maximate. I love Maximate. People can't stand it. It's chippy, blah, blah. Guys, this knife did so well in my testing. It was an absolute blast. It also gave me a little bit of heartbreak because we had all heard the rumor that if you mirror polish Maximate, it is not worth the time and it will be a letdown because the edge retention will be garbage basically if you polish it. And that rumor did end up being true, which I kind of thought it would be, but I wanted to experience it myself other than just being another parrot being like, I heard in the community that this is real. So we did polish this to a mirror polish. It took like hours and hours, and there is content on that and like a short that shows the mirror polish. And it was so not worth my time because I used this on like a couple boxes and that edge just lost its bite. It was so disappointing, but also rewarding to know that that was true. And like I said, I figured it would be, but Maximate really is one of those steels that you have to leave it bitey. You have to leave it at like a 600 grit edge tops. It is not worth the trouble and hassle of mirror polishing. But aside from that, in use, this was amazing. Maximate holds an edge forever. And as it dulls, it kind of just like microchips and is still sharp essentially. And those microchips will just continue cutting for you. So it's such a blast to use. I found it pretty easy to sharpen with diamonds. You just have to have diamonds. It's so hard. It's a tool steel. What is it for? Rollers, steel rollers. So it's not a knife steel, but when you make it into a knife, as long as you keep a really toothy edge on it, it's absolutely amazing. This was so fun to use. And the Native 5 as a whole, as a model, is one of my favorite folding knife designs. It is lightweight, durable. The lock is crazy strong, really ergonomic. It's just phenomenal. I cannot recommend especially the Maximate version of the Native 5 lightweight enough. It's an absolute pleasure and I will never get rid of this thing. I love Maximate. Next up is another K390 blade. Also, I keep forgetting, I'm trying to remember to recognize the hardness of each knife. I think Maximate is run pretty dang high, like 67, 68 type HRC. Please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments on any of these. I'm trying to go off of memory. I believe it's very high hardness, like 66, 67, 68 type deal, but please forgive me if I'm wrong. K390, 64.5 HRC, 10 thou BTE. This is the Duckhead Forge Slater. This was my first design with Dusty, who did the Chum. And this was meant to be just a little, pocket carry knife or just a small utility knife, 6.5 inches long, but thin, slicey, and super steel. And this was incredible to use. I really like the knives from like Fiddleback Forge, what is it, AA Forge, I think it is. Basically these really cool looking knives with these different pin areas, and I don't know, it's more of like an aesthetic thing for me. Just the multiple liners, the little pins, this kind of cool like retro angling almost. I really wanted to have something that was small, pocketable, cool looking, but actually performed. And the Slater hit all of the sweet spots with that. This knife was so fun to use. I actually own 3 Slaters, but they're all K390. Well, the 2 of them are K390. One of them is S60V, which we did a review on. That was really cool. But we got the Teeners on it. This knife just did so well in testing. I also have a beater version that we did a bunch of batoning, cross batoning, crazy stuff with. But this knife was exactly what I wanted. I wanted this to be, I wanted this to do everything. Maybe some game processing tasks, maybe some EDC tasks, rugged enough to handle camp tasks if you wanted. But this thing just turned out so cool, really fun to use. Love the ergonomics on it. There's really not much going on there. And a number of people that I know got these this year and have been equally as pleased with them. So all around, just a really cool experience being able to bring this together. And Dusty really does an incredible job on these knives. The next one, if Peanut Gallery was not already, you know, fuming in their office chairs, this one will really send them overboard. So this one is the Survive Knives EDC 2.7 or something. This knife surprised me. So I never once advocated for Survive, ever. I very specifically told people not to buy their knives, not to get involved. I could not help that this was sent to me, right? Like I didn't buy this. This was sent to me. And even with that, I never ever once said, go buy a Survive knife, go give them your money. I did the opposite. I was like, do not get involved, please, because it's not worth it. However, I ran this knife not thinking about the name or anything, more to just have an idea of what was going on with all of that. I wanted to know if these knives were good, regardless of the situation, the controversy, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that people are missing. I just wanted to know if the knife itself was good, regardless of all of the other stuff. So I did use this a lot this year. This is in Magna Cut at 62 HRC, heat treat done by Peters. And I really wanted to know, I wanted to get inside the mind of Guy, because he clearly messed up big time, really ripped a lot of people off, but I wanted to know what was going on in that brain of his, man. I was so curious about it. So when I got this knife, I used it a ton because I wanted to know if the designs that Guy created were good, regardless of the situation. And I can't lie, this knife was one of the most comfortable knives to use, one of the best and well-executed designs I've ever experienced. This knife is so cool to use, and it's so unfortunate that we will never see more of these again because Survive is dead. Will people make their versions of all of those knives? Yes, and that's super exciting because they're great designs. But it was just really unfortunate that mental health sent him off the rails. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying somebody that does something like that, clearly there's something very wrong. And it's unfortunate because the guy, in terms of designing, was a genius. This is so comfortable. The hidden lanyard hole is great. Not saying he created that. It's just implemented in his designs, and I love it. So ergonomic. The machining is on point. The steel was great. The grind was great. Tiny, tiny little blade, and it was just phenomenal to use. Very unfortunate what happened, but I can say that the design was incredible. And I hope that more people start making knives like this that are actually obtainable, because Guy really had something good going here, and it's so unfortunate what happened, but the knives themselves were amazing. End of story. Two left, guys. This is a really long video. My lord. My mama lord. Okay. Whew. Talk about high performance super steel the GOAT. Steve Callari Custom Knives, Steadfast EDC, Hollow Ground, 4V, 65.5 HRC, 66, something like that. Like 5,000 BTE. Guys, talk about someone who's pushing the envelope and proving everyone wrong. Talk about custom heat treat protocols, bringing these knives to like top tier performance. This knife blew my mind. Now, on paper, this 4V should not have outperformed some of the steels it outperformed. There is another knife tester reviewer, whatever you want to call it, Steely Toes, who did a cut test with Steve's 4V compared to something else I unfortunately forget, and he got exponential results as well. But this knife was so insane, it blew my mind. The hollow grind that Steve is capable of creating is beautiful. The ergonomics are some of the best I've ever used. This knife was insane when I used it. Cut and cut and cut forever without needing to be touched up. I did do a sharpening on camera with this knife to show how easy it is to sharpen 4V, because there are, you know, we know that we are told super steels are hard to sharpen. That's not true. We brought this to razor sharp on camera very easily in a very short period of time. It was such a dream to sharpen and deburr and strop. But this knife, guys, is a scientific masterpiece. Steve has taken every spec of this knife's existence and perfected it. Every single aspect. The pinch grip, the hammer grip, the way that he runs the thickness throughout, how wide it is in every aspect of this handle, the hollow grind, the degrees per side, the heat treat, the steel choice. It's just mind-blowing. When you get into high-performance knives, these are not for the average Joe. These are for someone who understands metallurgy, someone who's a knife nerd, someone who is looking to experience these steels at their top peak performance. That's what Steve is bringing to the community. And I love when people that talk shit actually serve you. I love that. I love how mad he makes everyone because he's right, and he's been right all along. And if you don't like him because he is a gorilla and talks shit, fine. I love him. I think it is so cool that, you know, kind of the whole time he was on YouTube, he's like, watch, one day I'm going to make knives and they're going to blow the competition out of the water. And he did. You know, he served and we ate, dude. Like, this knife is absolutely insane. If you're looking for a knife that will cut for eternity and not fail, Steve makes some insane knives. Absolutely insane. So this one blew my mind. This was my second experience with 4V, and 4V is truly one of my favorite steels. It is absolutely phenomenal. The last one, guys, a tribute to my OG, to one of my favorite knives. You have seen the Benchmade 940 Osborne on the channel for years. And my little green one covered in paint and all gross is still with me, of course. But we ended up getting this custom shop one sent in with the orange G10 and the satin hardware. And this was sent in as a gift, and we tested it for a month. And it was just a great kind of nostalgic throwback in time for me. The S30V held up great. It held an edge for the whole time, but this one wasn't really about steel performance. This was about, like, does the Benchmade 940 still have a place? You know, is it still one of the best knives ever made? Is it worth the money? Yes, I can't stand Benchmade as a company. They drive me nuts. But if I were to ever lose both of my 940s, you bet your ass I'd be getting them back. I don't want to give them money, but these are knives that I have to have. I love the 940. It is still one of the best EDC knives ever made. I love the length. I love the blade shape. Is it thick and overbuilt? Yes. Is it the best slicer? No. But guys, I'm still in the honeymoon phase with this knife after years of owning one and using one. I love the Benchmade 940. Everyone should have, in terms of folding knives, a Sabenza and a 940. And if you don't have the money, find a way. Find moms, get their money, buy the 940. Everyone should have one. If you need to get the 945, the little guy, go for it. But the 940 is just one of my favorite knives, and it was really fun to run one again after all the experience I've had with the 940, put a fresh one in the pocket, see if I'm still in love, and I sure am. I just will never, ever get rid of my 940s. Absolutely love it. Everything about it is amazing. I just love this knife. I tested and carried and used a lot of other knives this year, but these are the ones that, you know, just made the cut. And all of them were amazing. Nearly all of them. There was one that really was disappointing, but other than that, all of them did incredibly well. I just can't make a video that's 4 hours long on every single knife that I love from this year, but these were some of the top ones. Their performance or just their presence in my life made me happy this year, and every single one of them got genuinely used. There's a big difference between carrying something in your pocket that never sees daylight and then using something and pushing it to its ultimate limits and seeing what happens, right? So it was just really fun to genuinely use these, put them in the hands of other people that know nothing about knives, see what they had to say about it. And it was a beautiful experience. I am so excited to see what 2025 brings. We have a lot of stuff in the works, but thank you to all of the companies and makers that continuously give us consumers great knives, great performance, and I'm really, really lucky to have all of these, and I'm very blessed to have been able to use them. So thank you to all of you guys. But with that being said, let me know what you enjoyed using this year, or carrying, or touching, or looking at. In whatever capacity you experienced your knives, let me know what your favorites were down in the comments below. I love hearing them. I read every single comment and I do respond to every single comment. So please let me know what you liked this year. But that is my top 9 best performing knives of 2024. I will see you guys on the next video. Thank you for stopping by. Go use your shit. Learn how to sharpen your knives. I will see you guys on the next video. I love you so much, fam. Take care.